There is a moment in a woman's life when something changes. Not loudly, not dramatically. There may be no announcement, no confrontation, no final speech. She simply stops. Stops explaining herself, stops chasing approval, stops reacting to people who once had the power to disturb her peace. And strangely enough, this is often when people around her begin to notice her the most. Because the woman who used to ask, "What do they think of me?" begins asking a completely different question. What do I think of myself? This is what many people describe as the nobody can control me era of the Sigma female. And it doesn't mean she becomes cold, cruel, or incapable of love. It means something deeper has happened. She has discovered that control doesn't always look like someone giving you orders. Sometimes control looks like guilt. Sometimes it looks like approval. Sometimes it looks like fear of rejection. And sometimes the most powerful form of control is simply convincing you that you need someone else's permission to live your own life. But once she recognizes that game, she becomes extremely difficult to manipulate. Here are 9 signs a Sigma female has entered her "nobody can control me" era. One of the first signs is subtle. She doesn't feel the same need to defend every decision she makes. Previously, if someone misunderstood her, she might spend 20 minutes explaining why she left, why she said no, why she changed her mind, why she needed space. Now, she might simply say, "That's okay, you don't have to understand," and move on. This is a major psychological shift, because over-explaining often comes from the belief that someone else's understanding is necessary for your decision to be valid. But she eventually realizes something. People who genuinely respect you don't need a courtroom presentation every time you make a personal decision. And people who are determined to misunderstand you will find a way to misunderstand you anyway. So she stops arguing with the version of herself that exists inside other people's heads. She understands. You can misunderstand me, and I can still continue living. That sentence represents freedom, and once she learns it, she becomes much harder to control. The second sign is one of the biggest. She learns that no is a complete sentence. Not, "No, because I'm tired." Not, "No, because I have another appointment." Not, "No, and here are 7 reasons why you shouldn't be upset." Just, no. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, especially if she spent years being the person who accommodated everyone, the reliable one, the understanding one, the woman who would change her schedule to help someone else, the woman who didn't want to disappoint anyone. But eventually, she discovers something uncomfortable. If your kindness depends on never disappointing anyone, then it isn't really kindness, it's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being called selfish. So she starts protecting her time, her energy, her attention, her boundaries. And suddenly, people who benefited from her lack of boundaries may accuse her of changing. They're right. She did change, but not necessarily into someone worse. She simply stopped being endlessly available. This is where the transformation becomes obvious. Someone tries to provoke her. A passive-aggressive comment, a jealous remark, a deliberately cold response, a message designed to make her chase, an attempt to trigger insecurity, and instead of reacting, she becomes quiet. Not because she has nothing to say, because she has learned that not every invitation to conflict deserves an answer. This is one of the most powerful forms of emotional control. When someone realizes they can push your buttons, they gain influence over your behavior. They know exactly what to say, exactly what to do, exactly how far they can go. But when she stops reacting predictably, the entire dynamic changes. Now they don't know what will happen. Will she respond? Will she leave? Will she laugh? Will she ignore it? The uncertainty removes their leverage, and that is why emotional self-control can be more intimidating than aggression. She doesn't need to win the argument. Sometimes she simply refuses to participate. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, because most people want to be liked. The Sigma female isn't immune to that desire. She's human. She may still enjoy appreciation, she may still care about people, But she stops making decisions solely to avoid disappointing them. And that changes everything. She realizes someone being disappointed with me doesn't automatically mean I did something wrong. Think about how powerful that is. You can disappoint your parents, your friends, your partner, your coworkers, your audience, and still make the decision that's right for your life. She starts separating discomfort from danger. Someone being upset doesn't necessarily mean you're unsafe. Someone disagreeing doesn't mean you're wrong. Someone leaving doesn't mean you're worthless. And once she understands that, guilt loses a significant amount of its power over her. This is where relationships begin to change. Someone becomes distant. They stop texting. They become inconsistent. They suddenly act uninterested. The old version of her might have chased. What happened? Did I do something? Are you mad at me? Can we talk? But the new version notices the distance and watches. She doesn't immediately run after someone who is walking away because she has learned a brutal lesson. You cannot force someone to value you, and chasing someone rarely creates genuine desire. It usually creates an unhealthy dynamic where one person withdraws and the other desperately tries to restore the connection. So she stops participating. If you want to leave, leave. If you want space, take it. If you don't want to communicate, that's your choice. But she won't spend her life trying to convince someone to choose her. Her mindset becomes, if your absence is your answer, I'll respect it. And sometimes the most powerful response to rejection is not revenge. It's acceptance. This is perhaps the deepest transformation. She starts building independence, not just financially, psychologically, emotionally, socially. She develops her own interests, her own goals, her own routines, her own standards, her own identity. She doesn't need someone to constantly entertain her. She doesn't need constant validation. She doesn't need a relationship to prove that she's desirable, and she doesn't need a crowd to prove that she matters. This doesn't mean she doesn't want people. It means she no longer needs people to complete the foundation of her identity. That's a huge difference. A healthy, independent woman can say, I want you in my life, without secretly meaning, I cannot function without you. And that distinction changes the way she enters relationships. She chooses people. She doesn't cling to them. She can love deeply, while still knowing how to walk away. When a Sigma female enters this era, she starts treating access to her life differently. Not everyone gets the same version of her. Not everyone gets her secrets. Not everyone gets her emotional energy. Not everyone gets immediate responses. And not everyone gets another chance. She begins observing people before trusting them. How do they behave when they're angry? How do they treat people who can't benefit them? Do they respect boundaries? Do they celebrate your success? Do they only appear when they need something? Do their actions match their words? She watches, quietly, and this is where her intuition becomes important. She doesn't necessarily need someone to openly betray her. Sometimes inconsistency is enough. A pattern is enough. A feeling that something doesn't align is enough to make her step back. She isn't trying to punish people, she's simply becoming selective. Because she finally understands access to your energy should be earned, not automatically granted. This is the psychological freedom that most people never fully develop. The need to be liked can control almost every aspect of your behavior. You change your opinions, you soften your personality, you hide your ambitions, you avoid confrontation, you laugh when something isn't funny. You agree when you actually disagree. You become a version of yourself designed for public consumption. But eventually, she gets tired. She realizes something. Being liked by everyone requires becoming different people for different audiences, and that's exhausting. So she starts choosing authenticity over universal approval. Some people will think she's intimidating, like some will think she's arrogant, some will call her distant, some will say she's changed, and she stops trying to correct every opinion. Because the goal is no longer, how can I make everyone understand me? The goal becomes, how can I remain honest with myself? And ironically, the less she tries to be liked, the more magnetic she can become. Because authenticity is rare. This is the final sign, and perhaps the most powerful. She discovers that leaving is an option. Leaving the friendship, leaving the relationship, leaving the environment, leaving the conversation, leaving the version of herself that no longer fits. And once someone knows they can walk away, they become much harder to control. Because manipulation often depends on creating the illusion that you have no alternatives. You need me. You won't find better. Everyone will leave you. You'll regret this. You can't do it alone. But she starts realizing, maybe I can't. Maybe being alone is better than being controlled. Maybe losing someone is painful, but losing myself would be worse. That's when her standards become real. Not because she believes she's better than everyone, but because she finally believes she deserves to participate in relationships where her autonomy is respected. And that's the difference between being difficult to control and simply being difficult. The Sigma female doesn't need to dominate anyone. She doesn't need to manipulate people back. She doesn't need revenge. She doesn't need to prove she's powerful. Her power comes from something much quieter. She knows she can leave, but there's something important about this transformation. It isn't really about becoming a Sigma female. It's about becoming psychologically independent. Because the ultimate goal isn't, nobody can control me. The ultimate goal is, I control myself. That's much deeper. She controls her reactions, her attention, her boundaries, her decisions, her standards, her time, her emotional investment, and most importantly, she stops handing the remote control of her emotional state to other people. Someone can insult her. They don't automatically control her mood. Someone can reject her. They don't automatically control her self-worth. Someone can leave. They don't automatically control her future. Someone can misunderstand her. They don't automatically control her identity. That's freedom. Not becoming emotionless, not becoming cold, not becoming incapable of love, but becoming capable of loving people without abandoning yourself. And perhaps that's why this transformation can look so intimidating from the outside. Because the woman who once needed permission doesn't ask anymore. The woman who once chased now observes. The woman who once over-explained now accepts being misunderstood. The woman who once feared rejection now understands that rejection is sometimes redirection. And the woman who once believed she needed everyone finally realizes she needs one person above all others, herself. So if you've noticed these changes in yourself, maybe you're not becoming cold. Maybe you're becoming more conscious of where your energy goes. Maybe you're not losing people. Maybe you're losing relationships that depended on the older version of you. And maybe the reason some people suddenly find you different is because you finally stopped being easy to control. Because sometimes the quietest transformation is the most powerful one. You don't announce it. You don't threaten anyone. You don't seek revenge. You simply stop negotiating against yourself. And from that moment forward, the question is no longer, how do I make them stay? It's, does this belong in the life I'm building? And once you start asking that question, everything changes.